Hi, everyone. This is Jeff Clark of the Paydirt Prospector here at the Metals Investor Forum in Toronto, and I'm here with the CEO of Erdene Resource Development, Peter Akerley. Peter, thanks very much for joining me.
Hey, happy to be here, Jeff.
So, Peter, I said in my presentation that one thing that I really like about the company is you. I've gained just so much respect for you, what you've been able to do with this company,
Sure.
And how far you've come. For those who don't know you, give us a little quick background on you and your team that's working there in Mongolia.
Sure. So I'm a geologist that graduated 37 years ago.
You're dating yourself there now.
Here, yes. But I almost immediately entered the international exploration industry. I worked in British Guyana, I worked in the Philippines, Mexico, found myself in Mongolia in 1997. Just as it was starting to open up to foreign investment, new mining laws. So I was one of the first wave of foreign geologists to come into the country. And what I saw was very attractive. You had a great belt of rocks in the southern part of the country that hosts some of the true giants in our industry. Morantau off to the west is the largest gold deposit on the planet. Today you have Oyu Tolgoi, which is about to become the fourth largest copper gold mine on the planet. And in between that, in southwestern Mongolia, there was an area of that belt that had seen no modern exploration. And so, going back to 1997, we were looking at the entire country. We had 10 very large licenses, like 500,000 hectares each.
Wow.
We brought in Barrick Gold as a joint venture partner. This was with another company in Toronto. And I had the best Country 101 experience you could possibly have. I explored, I flew around the country, visited all these camps, saw the different belts, and even at that time began to recognize that the southern part of the country was the most prospective, the most likely to host large-scale arc-related epithermal gold and copper porphyries. Simultaneous with that, you had Magma becoming BHP, exploring in the southeastern part of the Gobi, and starting to get their drills into what turned into Oyu Tolgoi eventually. Robert Friedland came into the picture a few years later, and we used that in his very successful deep drilling in 2001, 2002 to launch Erdene. And so at that point, I started to build the team of Mongolian and Canadian and American geologists and professionals that allowed us to become the most active regional explorer in the country. And for the better part of 20 years, we've been just that. And we've had 100 exploration licenses. We've converted 4 of those to mining licenses. We've been fairly ruthless in our objective of finding unique high-grade and/or large deposits. And that's really taken us to concentrate in southwestern Mongolia in an area we call the Transaltai terrain. In 2009, we explored a 400-kilometer belt, spent the better part of $6 million over a few years to just do regional exploration, from satellite imagery down to boot and hammer, and discovered what we call today the Hundy Minerals District. So much of my career, to answer your question, has been Mongolia-centric since 1997. But prior to that, working globally with different companies, including Rio Tinto, I mentioned to you that before, and Barrick Gold in Mongolia.
Yeah, great. And all of this work is going to start to come to fruition. It's got to be very rewarding for you.
Yeah.
You're building a mine. You tell me what percentage completion you are.
Sure.
And you're going to be pouring first gold here this summer-ish.
That's right. Yeah, tremendously exciting period. Our strategy from probably 2018-19 was to move to cash flow, to avoid the constant dilution we see in uncertain equity markets, and to move this company to cash flow so we could truly explore this exciting new district. There's 3 deposits have been discovered at surface, 180 meters below surface. But we're the first people out there. We're the first people ever to put drill holes in this area, and we've had that level of success in about a 40-kilometer radius area. I'm just dying to see what else is going to be out there as we have the wherewithal through cash flow to be more aggressive with our exploration.
Absolutely. And a lot of companies say, well, we have other projects and we got a lot of potential. But in your case, these are other projects that are nearby that are really almost virgin. They've really never, they're not underexplored, they're unexplored.
That's right, yeah.
The potential here is enormous, not beyond Bayan Kundai.
Well, just a couple of examples of that. We discovered Altan Nar in 2011. We moved it to a resource in 2015 during very uncertain times. It was very difficult to raise the money. But over a 5-kilometer strike length, we drilled off 2 small areas of that system, and we have 500,000 ounces of gold at 2 grams per ton. We have 3 million ounces of silver and about 200 million pounds of lead zinc, all within the upper 200 meters from surface. But that sat on the shelf because that same year we put out the resource, we've discovered Bayan Hyundai. And we've shifted our focus there and really put our minds to, let's get this thing into production. We're 80% complete, back to your earlier question.
Okay.
We expect to see first ore through that plant this summer. It'll take about 60 days, I'd say, to get this to commercial production.
Okay.
And once we're there in September, October, then you're looking at 7,000 ounces a month, or roughly 85,000 ounces per year in steady state production, coming out for a 5-year period. As I think you mentioned, in the 6th year, it starts to drop off from a reserve perspective, but we have a tremendous amount of potential right around our pit. That pit was designed at $1,800 gold, and already at today's gold price, we can see that expansion. So this will be well in excess of a 10-year mine life based on current gold prices, but it's the exploration upside.
Right.
We stepped out in October and drilled 40 meters of 7 grams per ton, just 200 meters from the pit. These are numbers that people get excited about at a kilometer depth, and here we are pretty much at surface.
That's amazing.
Yep.
And back to production, costs are going to be pretty attractive and giving you a pretty strong margin.
Absolutely. We're certainly in the lowest quartile. When we issued the feasibility study in 2023, the all-in sustaining cost was $870. Doesn't include any of the exploration costs that we would incur, but all-in sustaining cost. You're probably looking at about a 10 to 15% inflationary impact since that feasibility was issued, but it still puts us into the low thousands, let's say 10,000, 1050, which puts us at a very low end of the spectrum.
It is, because the average all-in sustaining cost right now industry-wide is about $1,450. Right. So what an attractive margin that is going to be, and Absolutely. That is going to provide you with some cash flow. But you're already funded. Some people get nervous about Mongolia, but you actually have the Mongolian government backing you, have the largest mining company in Mongolia partnering with you. Yep. You're already funded. Tell us about
That's right. So the CapEx was $100 million in 23. If you assume there's a 15% projected increase by the time we're all said and done, $115 million. But we've tied up access to $170 million in funding. Wow. We have $80 million in shareholders loan from MMC, $40 million in equity. Plus, in December, we tied up a deal with TDB, which is a Mongolian commercial bank, for another $50 million. And the reason for that is, people say it's $115 million CapEx. It's a lot of accessible cash. You need to be in a position to have that buffer as you go through that startup period.
Right.
We'll construct it by, let's say, end of March. We're all said and done with the construction and that 115. But then it's probably $5 million a month to go through pre-production costs, to do your early mining, to be in a position to weather any storms that might come. And our industry's seen a lot of those as people go through the startup phase. So we wanted to make sure we had the wherewithal financially to weather that period and hit that first cash flow as we move into late Q3, Q4.
Gotcha. Now, all this funding, does that mean you're a little bit of a challenge question here, but does that mean your share count is a little high and you have a lot of debt? Tell us about that.
Well, our share count we're at 360 million outstanding, but our strategy here has been to avoid further dilution. So we haven't raised any money since, I guess it was the December of 2022 was the last funding we did. And our intention is not to raise additional funds through equity because we have the wherewithal through debt to do that. And we have at the corporate level about $6 or $7 million in cash today, which is unallocated. We'll keep that sort of close to our chest until we get through first gold and make sure we don't need to distribute that into the gold mine build. But our expectation is we will redistribute that or use those dollars for the Zuun Mod molybdenum project and start to move that forward later this year as well.
So that's what we can expect to see as investors is first gold pour and then move on to Zuun this year.
That's right. Yeah. So we would like to get a PEA completed this year and move on to additional drilling and ideally move into a pre-feas in 2026. But we will be doing exploration. We're doing the infill drilling, but also as we move into September, October, and we see that cash flow in our sites, we will start to increase our exploration west of the pit where we had those great intersections last year. We'll start to do more exploration at Dark Horse. And as we tip into 2026, start to move Altan Nar forward as well.
That's great. Fantastic. A lot in the pipeline. This is one you might want to take a look at relatively quickly because we're getting close to first pour here, but the upside potential is really enormous. So Peter, thanks for joining me, and thanks for watching here at the Metals Investor Forum.